this panel, and I'm a little excited about the panel because I think I might understand something. Although I'm kind of frightened, I'm learning that your words don't mean what the rest of us think. I see React ecosystem panel. I'm going to hear like 4 words I understand, right? I know I won't get it. There are a bunch of people on the panel. Tracy Lee, Kent Dobbs, Sean, I like this, Swix. Wayne, you got to tell us what the Swix is for. I'm going to do that then. Swix. Daisy Nolan, and is that Daisy or Darcy? I can't read. Hunter Miller. This panel's going to, oh, I see someone, I'm waving. It's Daisy. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's Daisy.
Awesome. All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, bang your hands together for the React ecosystem panel. I want to see clap. I'm not going to do anything until people clapping in the things. Hold on a second. I don't see nothing in it. There it is. We got a woo. We got a woo. That counts. All righty. I hand it over to this wonderful panel.
Well, thank you all for having us. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeap. I'm CEO of a company called Vistat Labs. Very excited to be platinum sponsors of Magnolia this year. We're hiring too, so come hang out with us. If you're looking for a job, you can always find me on Twitter again at LadyLeap. And today, one of my co-hosts is going to be Hunter Miller. Hunter, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hey everyone, Hunter Miller. I'm a senior software engineer at Vistat, and I get to work with Tracy all the time, which is awesome.
I always love Hunter's ideas and coffee he brings to the table. Cool. And then we have a few panelists. Do you guys want to just do a quick 10-second introduction of who y'all are?
Go ahead, Daisy.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Hi, I'm Daisy Nolan. I'm a front-end software engineer at Publicist. I'm self-taught, so been doing this for a year now. So I think I'm technically considered a junior, but glad to be here.
Cool. I'll go next. So I am Kent, and I teach people how to write quality software. I created testingjavascript.com and epicreact.dev. Yeah, I'm also happy to be here, and I'm happy that you're all here too.
We need to do a passing the potato thing of who's next, so we can coordinate. Hey everyone, I'm Sean, also known as Swix. Yeah, I see the hand action. I guess that's a thing now. For Ken, Swix is just my English and Chinese initials, just to make it unique. I've had it since I was 13, so it's kind of a thing that I've leaned into. I help to run the React and TypeScript cheat sheets, which is the sort of de facto community documentation for React and TypeScript users. I was a moderator of the React subreddit, going to over 200,000 members. Yeah, I just generally love being part of React ecosystem and web dev in general. Who's next?
I think that's it. I think Michael was supposed to join us. I'm not sure what happened, but that's okay. Maybe he'll join us later. Folks who are listening in, feel free to ask questions if you like. We do have a few questions prepared, and really excited again for you all to lend your time and energy to hang out with us. Hunter, I'll let you take it away.
All right, let's get going. So I did these questions. Hopefully they're good. If not, you can just tell me they're horrible. We can do something else. All right. Accessibility is always a huge concern. And I feel like it's getting a lot of focus lately, especially with some of the more modern frameworks like React. So how do y'all feel the ecosystem has evolved maybe since, the beginnings of React? And are there any changes that you would, make to React to help kind of make it easier?
I can start on this one. So the ecosystem has certainly evolved, not just in the React world, but overall. I think the platform, they're trying to do things. They have ideas for select. Nobody uses the actual select element because you can't style it, so everybody has to build their own, and it's very difficult to build that accessibly. I built a downshift JS that for React for that, and it was very difficult. just takes a lot of time. But because the platform is lacking in this area, I think it's been put onto the ecosystem to kind of fill in the gaps. And I feel like over the last few years, they've done a really great job. So I pretty much just use Reach UI for everything, but I know that's not the only one. There are plenty that are in the React world. I'm not sure about outside of React. But yeah, Reach UI has just been awesome. It has pretty much every component that I need. I haven't had to do a date picker in a long time, and I know those are a little tricky. but yeah, like I think in general the ecosystem has evolved pretty well, and there are a lot of options available in the JavaScript world, so you don't have to build it yourself, and you can rely on what other people have built.
Who's next?
Yeah, I was about to say, Sean, you go.
I don't know. So I wasn't around for the start of React. I do a lot of archaeology of like digging up fossils about React's history. So I don't know if I'm qualified to say what I would change about it. I definitely think that it's an interesting direction that people are going in, where essentially a lot of the development is either funded by venture capital or funded by customers, right? Which is what Remix is kind of doing. And it's an interesting evolution of the pure open source days where everyone's kind of like hippy dippy, just releasing code for free. I think it's good and bad in some ways, because good because there's some attempt at a sustainable business model, so we can hopefully expect higher quality software. Bad because there will always be some kind of corporate interest that is promoting some kind of agenda. So it is what it is. I think it's a maturing of React. I think one fact I'd like to point out is that React is as old as jQuery was when React was released. So it's kind of in that life cycle. And jQuery had its own monetization and build out of that ecosystem. So I think that's what's happening.
That was really cool perspective. Thank you for being the best archaeologist ever. By the way, Sean has a newsletter. You should sign up for it, right, Sean?
Yeah, 6.io/subscribe. Just the weekly observations. That's all. Not necessarily web dev, but yeah, it's there. I mean, it's fascinating, right? Like it's the largest programming medium, and we're all taking a part of it. It's so cool.
So I have one question. All right, so with React, do you prefer to use like any community frameworks out there, build your own? Do you have custom approaches to scaffold your React projects?
I know I definitely like use existing ones. I've not been brave enough to tackle my own, but that's something like I'd love to do. I'm trying to make my application like more accessible at work, and so I'm finding where like some of the things that I want to do, I can't find tools for. So why not build it? So that's my answer.
I agree with Daisy that if what you need is already built, then why would you bother spending the time building that? just use the thing that works. I mean, I actually wrote a blog post about this a few weeks ago, where you're deciding between whether to buy versus build. And yeah, like in buy terms, unless it's Remix, I guess, if it's an open source thing, then you're not actually buying, you're just using the thing that already exists. And there are trade-offs that come, with trying to retrofit an existing solution for your problem, which may not match very well. But if you do a good analysis of whether this solution already solves the problem that you have, like if you have a good problem overlap, then yeah, then just I mean, are you in the business of building a framework, or are you in the business of building whatever your company's mission is? So if you're in the business of building a framework, then I guess you're Remix or something like that. And that's fine. That's great if that's what you want to do. But for me, I would never, at this point, like we have too many solutions to build our own, unless what we're trying to build is the solution.
I have a slightly different take, just for people who are curious to go deeper. I think that it's a nice ideal. It's not necessarily what I do, but it's a nice ideal to be able to build the tools that you eventually use, right? To not need it, do everything the hard way, and then you much appreciate what the tool is doing for you when you actually use the tool, including when it goes wrong. You just know how to fix it because you don't need it in the first place. So it's kind of like how I think about React. Like you should learn web development however you want, but for me the real unlock was learning to do UI without React and making a small clone of React. And then I just fundamentally understood React in a way that I didn't know before if I only used the tool. So if you just make the tool first, like a small clone, you don't have to clone every single thing, but if you just know the process, you have a greater appreciation for what it does for you.
I really agree with that, Sean. Just if I can piggyback off of that, when I was learning JavaScript, Merrick Christensen, some of you probably know who he is. He's awesome. He was my sensei learning JavaScript, and he recommended that I go to _JS because Lodash wasn't a thing, and he suggested that I try to re-implement all of the methods that underscore has. That's a brilliant way to learn, and I didn't do it because I'm a bad student, but I totally recommend it anyway because it's just a fantastic way. And in general, I think it's a good idea to understand one layer below your abstraction. And a good way to do that is to try and implement it yourself, like a simple clone. So that's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that. Like, I think some of the best things that I've ever learned came from, trying to mimic some of these libraries and frameworks. A really good example of this, if people are interested, is if you look at Tanner Lindsley's talk on React Query and how he got to that point. He kind of goes through, kind of like you were talking about, Sean, like you see like why they had to do the things that they did, where the roadblocks were and things like that. So I would say
people will be nicer on the internet for all
yeah, right, exactly.
They try to build React and then
then
be nicer in your GitHub issues.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, definitely use frameworks if they give you a leg up, but it's also good, if you ever run into an issue, it's a deep issue, then you may not know where to go, right? If there's no GitHub issue or Stack Overflow to reference. So
yeah, I mean, and there's some amount of like real reinvention that is necessary. In the sense that some people can get stuck in local maxima to use the really nerdy phrase for this, and it takes someone who is unreasonable, who comes along and goes like, everything out there is crap and I'm going to build my own version of it, to actually progress, right? So we do need those kinds of people, which is what is kind of happening with ES Build right now. Evan, I don't know his last name, Evan Wallace from Figma, just decided that all these existing tooling is crap and just built his own, and now we're just moving the entire JavaScript ecosystem over to it. It's pretty awesome to watch.
No big deal,
it makes you think. It makes you think what else is out there.
Hunter, do you want to ask the next?
Sure. Yeah, I think a good follow-up to this kind of question is, there's a lot of people coming online as developers, and the first thing that they're learning is React, which is kind of scary to me. But anyway, should they be starting with React? Should they go into the fundamentals? Like if you were teaching devs, where would you shove them?
So I can speak on experience. So I'm self-taught, and I went from HTML to CSS straight to React, not knowing that I needed to know JavaScript. So I took an online course for React, and the course was talking about like map methods. And I was just like, what is this? And I'm like, did I miss something? So I did not know those, like the those methods like filter and reduce and things like that. And so I finished the course, and I was more confused when I finished the React course than when I started. So I went back and learned as much as I could about JavaScript, and then I started the course again on React. So I think it's super important to learn those fundamentals ahead of time, and be able to like fully understand React. Also, you could really see the pros that React has. I mean, vanilla JavaScript, I feel like I repeat myself a lot. Going into React, you can really see, that benefit of not having to write, the get element by ID and like things like that. So I think it's really important for learning, as well as like seeing like all the advantages of React.
Thank you for sharing that actual experience, because I can just speak from, it's been years since I got into this. From my perspective, I absolutely agree. It's an interesting balance, because I know that I almost didn't get into software, because the way that I learned was like, all right, let's talk about making a linked list. And I was just like, this is so stupid. Like, why, who cares about making a linked list? And they were like nerding about compilers and stuff. And it wasn't until I finally built something that was useful that I realized, okay, so no, this is actually fun and interesting. And so if I hadn't gotten the job that I did, where I decided to build something useful, I probably wouldn't have gotten into software. I'd be like an accountant right now or something. That'd be awful. So there is a balance of like, let's build something that's interesting, and let's learn the fundamentals. And so what I try to encourage people to do is to try and get something built as quickly as possible. And then when you want to level up, then you go into the fundamentals. All of that said, I think that when I teach people React, I assume that they understand JavaScript and that they know those array methods and stuff. And I'm upfront about that. And that's why I have a blog post of the JavaScript to know for React. And if you don't know these things, then go learn these things first before you learn React from me, because I do think that there's a level of JavaScript that you have to understand to be able to use React effectively. And if we were talking about a different framework, then like AngularJS, you have to learn how to like filter and do different things in the Angular template, and you can't really learn that anywhere else. You're just learning Angular, but not to call out Angular specifically. They're all different trade-offs and approaches. And so for React, yeah, you definitely need to have a good, solid understanding of JavaScript to be able to use it at all. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say jump into React first. I would say jump into JavaScript and have a good understanding of the features that you're going to need. But jump into if you want to do UI, then jump into React early, I think, so that you can build something fun and interesting. Not to say that you can't build something fun and interesting with vanilla, and I think that at some point you absolutely should. But yeah, React as a mechanism for building some really interesting stuff pretty quickly, I think is a great way to get started as an engineer.
Yeah, do I need to say more? It's good. It's good. It's good stuff. It's got jobs. That's why I picked it. It's done well.
I would go ahead and echo what Ken said about, if you want to build something fast, because I still remember my first week learning JavaScript and trying to do things on the screen. And, my boyfriend at the time saw me struggling and he's like, do I want to do this to you? And then he showed me Ember and I was like, I can build websites. And, just magically my entire life changed. So I feel like getting into React early, after like a few fundamentals, again, I only had a week of fundamentals, meaning did I even really have fundamentals, and jumped in and, I was able to build. So, I mean, does that mean I know more about frameworks than JavaScript? Sure, but that's life. At least I'm productive. So, and that's what gets you the jobs.
Yeah. And like, it comes down to, I'm at this certain point where I just know frameworks really well and I want to level up. And so then you're like, okay, yeah, sure. I'm going to go into the fundamentals. And that's how you level up, is to learn those fundamentals. So I don't really think it's a super big concern. I know that there's a lot of gatekeeping here where you're not a real developer if you don't know how to link a CSS style sheet on the page or something. Like, I think that's bogus. But at the same time, you're more effective using the abstractions if you understand what they do, which kind of circles back to what Sean said earlier about building the abstraction. And so there's a difference between getting into things and leveling up, and you take different activities when you do both of those things.
So we only have, sorry, Hunter, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, we should probably do some of these Q&A.
Yes, we only have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Maybe the middle one, Elliot's, about the business logic.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. You want to read it out?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So, go ahead.
So Elliot says they've received feedback that to become more senior in their skill set, they need to work on becoming better at separating their components from business logic. And their kind of question is, does this mean like Redux, MobX, use context, or some state management and TypeScript?
All the things. I mean, pick one. Those are all equivalent solutions. By the way, I did a survey when I was a moderator for the Reddit, and it was a third. Redux, context, and then MobX, and the miscellaneous other stuff. So, like, it's fine. It's probably a skill set that you really need. There are other solutions out there as well, and I could tell you more about how they map out. But they're all really small differences compared to the general principle that you might want to separate your app business logic from your components. The term presentational components and containers is a little bit outmoded right now, but it can still be a nice way to think about these things.
GraphQL.
I have from the start been against client state management in GraphQL. I think it's Apollo trying to lay claim to state management, and I'm not standing for it, but use what makes you happy.
I've found that once I separate my server state from my client state, state management gets so much easier. So I just put, and if Apollo is your jam, then that's fine. I like React Query a lot. Frankly, I don't want to turn into a Remix commercial, but I just love Remix so much, and Remix eliminates so many of these problems for me. I don't even have to worry about the problems that Apollo or React Query solves. So yeah, I think that once you in general, if you separate your state, your client state and your server state, then like application logic or business logic is just left in functions that you interact with for your components. It's just like UI state, and yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean Redux or MobX or even context. A lot of it is state co-location. I've got tons of blog posts on all this stuff. Just look up state on my blog.
I also want to say, like, sometimes the reasons that they give you are not the actual reasons you're not getting promoted. They could be pointing towards something minute, just to throw you a bone, but actually you need to dig a bit deeper as to why you're there. They have some issue advancing you in your career. It's often people not being direct enough.
I agree. It sounds like that's like one piece, but probably not the entire story. It's like, okay, if you can do this one thing, then maybe we can move you on to the next thing, to the next thing, the next thing. Yeah,
there's just absolutely no way. There's a deeper thing going on.
Actually, if I can deviate off script, like I feel like there's one question. We only have 3 minutes left, but how do you go from like mid to senior as a React developer? Like, is there like stuff you have to learn specifically, or I don't know, how do you do it? What's the magic?
I don't know an answer to this question. I don't know if an answer exists because every company has a different definition of this. And so because there's a different definition at every company, then you just make up your own definition and you just say, I'm a senior React developer. I don't know. So yeah, there's no, I don't think there's an answer. Sorry.
Is this where I say I've written a book on this? I mean, look, you are senior the moment someone gives you a title of senior, and the pay according with it, because titles without pay is bullshit. But there are certain qualities that a lot of companies look for, and I've studied, every public career ladder out there. You can look for that blog post as well, and it's a pretty common set of criteria that people look for. I think something that I highly recommend is essentially being independent, being able to carry the ball, right? Like someone gives you something and they can trust you to ship it end to end without much assistance. And if it's beyond you, or if you're going to slip past estimates, you should also throw the exception and say like, hey, I don't have this, or we're not going to meet this deadline. I think that's a sign of maturity in a senior. Being able to mentor others is kind of the next step to raise up the people around you and become a force multiplier for your team. And then beyond that, there's a ton of other opinions that everyone has about junior versus senior. And but there's certainly nothing to do with React. It's more about, I tend to use this phrase, I'm not sure if it sticks, but we're more sort of code-enabled humans than we are, people typing on that we only output code. So you might want to think about things like architecture, things like how we interact with the backend team or other business stakeholders, right? And making sure that we are positive contributors to the business. I think that's about it. It's going to be highly dependent on whether you work at like, a 10-person company versus like a 10,000-person company. And I've done both, and it's very different on either side.
Name drop your book.
Oh, someone already has in the chat. So thank you, whoever did that. It's learningpublic.org. But yeah, I basically studied everyone's advice, including Kent, on what it takes to be a great developer. And I think that we should discuss, in forums like these, like when people get promoted, a lot of times like the technical criteria is only like a quarter of the evaluation criteria, and then the rest is like communication skills and like your ability to understand like the business impact of your technology work. There's all that good stuff that's sort of hidden under the surface. And guess what? Your college or your boot camp didn't prepare you for any of this.
I'll echo that. It's all about soft skills, and sometimes it's just arbitrary, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about saying soft skills, because like soft has like a weak connotation.
Yeah, like it's all emotional,
Yeah, so I try not to use that phrase, but then I use like 100 words to replace the 2 words. Maybe it's not worth it. So, okay, core skills. Thanks, Becca. Hey, Becca. Yeah, so that's my quick take. I don't know if Daisy has other thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, I hate to say I'm a junior engineer because I feel like my skill sets are higher than a junior, not to sound conceited, but I feel like I have a good understanding to make me more mid-level. And so that's what I would say, like leveling up from a junior to mid-level would be just like being able to see these problems and knowing how to fix them, rather than when I was a junior, I felt like I did a lot of research of like, okay, like how do I solve this and what's going to be the best way to solve it? Whereas now I feel like I'm a mid-level, is I can see these and I know exactly like what needs to be done without having to dig. I don't have to rely on my manager as much. So I think that definitely distinguishes between like a junior to mid-level. I don't know. That's just what I think.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacy. And thanks all of you. I think we're out of time now. So to everyone listening, hopefully this was informative. Y'all gave some great answers. And if you have questions, feel free to ask us on Twitter or in the chat. Well, stick around. Bye, y'all. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks for having us.